Hello, Leo. This is a forecast for Leo rising and Leo moon sign for August 2021. So, Leo, your ruling planet or the sun is moving through your 12th house for the first couple of weeks. It will move into your sign. This is sidereal Leo, of course, on August 16th. And so you're about to move into a position of great strength. And watch out for that because you've got Mars already moving through Leo, as well as Venus. And when the sun joins Leo, this will be a very powerful time, personally, a very powerful time for you. Now, it will be, and it isn't just yet, because we're starting the month with the sun, your ruler, opposing Saturn on the 1st and 2nd of August. So that is a challenge for you personally, where your energy just might be a bit under par, or you might feel completely restricted or limited in some way. And the obvious examples of that, of course, are your freedom to just do what you want and go where you want. Maybe your wish to go, on retreat somewhere, or even long distance travel. That's all to do with the 12th house and how that's restricted currently with Saturn opposing the sun, and Saturn is opposing the sun in your 6th house. So this is very much about having to deal with the everyday kind of drudgery, your tasks, and need to look after, paying the bills and doing the everyday stuff and looking after your health and doing all of that, that you need to do, because Saturn is certainly impressing that upon you right now with its retrograde and opposition to your ruler. And at the same time, you might not want to do it, and it might feel too constraining. And so the obvious solution to this would be to actually do what needs to be done and to focus your energy on doing that and not take on too much at this time. Because if you take on too much, of course, your energy gets scattered. And this is one of the more negative expressions of Saturn, and the planet that rules the air element is kind of scattered all over the place, sort of not really focusing on anything in particular and feeling quite anxious and unnerved and a bit sort of, um, not very productive, not very organized. All of these things will be Saturn type of themes. Saturn opposes the sun at this time, but they are opposed anyway. They're absolutely in opposition. They're completely on two ends of a spectrum. So sun is all about rhythm and life and vitality and energy and power and assurity and certainty and confidence. And opposite that is the son of the sun, as it's called in Vedic myth. The sun had a child with his wife Chaya, which is the shadow. And so Saturn became the son of the sun. And so Saturn is everything the sun is not. It's opposite to our vitality and energy and confidence. It's our weakness, our darkness, our doubts and insecurities. And when these play off each other, we can see this in the world at large in more obvious ways, of course. But the challenges that are going on out there in the world are a reflection of the inner struggles we're all having. And for you, Leo, this is a very personal inner struggle that you're having between these light and dark energies. Um, and this is a big theme that plays out, of course, in so many stories and, in big movies, think about Star Wars and all of this kind of light and dark kind of theme, and the Saturn being the son of the sun. A lot of this theme is played out over and over again, this good versus evil, if you want to put it that way, in so many stories. So this story in your life, Leo, is the contrast between your everyday life and you want to just leave it all behind and go away and just tune out of it all, which is what the sun in the 12th would like. Mercury is also conjoined the sun, and so this is Mercury's superior conjunction with the sun opposing Saturn. So when you add Mercury into the mix now, it's also something that you would like to gain, and that's something that's important to you in this mix. And you just cannot quite see that yet. You cannot quite see it, even though the sun and Mercury coming together can bring a lot of insights. Because it's in your 12th house, there can be something hidden from you. So when we add the fact that these are opposite Saturn, that adds a bit more murkiness, a bit more doubt as to what you're doing, a lack of confidence and a surety. So lean into the uncertainty, I would say. Go with what you have been presented with, what you can do in this moment, and where you can go. Obviously, accepting that there are certain things you cannot do right now within the current restrictions. That's what we all have to accept with Saturn. But there are certainly many things that you can do for yourself in your everyday life, Saturn in the sixth. And that will be a better expression of this opposition heading into the first and second of the month, especially, but even after that, until the sun moves by mid month. So by the time the sun moves mid month, that's a whole other energy. It's like the month can be split in half, as is always the case with the sidereal zodiac. Of course, the sun moves mid month, but this month in August, as it does every year, is a great time of strength for you. And this one will be even more welcome because it's the change of Saturn versus Sun to Saturn versus, or sorry, Jupiter versus Sun. So you have this Saturn Sun opposition right now, but later on in the month, you'll have a Sun Jupiter opposition. And that's just a whole other sort of more optimistic, enthusiastic, opportunistic expression. Um, it's really not as restrictive as the Sun Saturn. Now, I'm saying not as because there still is that sense of restriction hanging in the air, and that's continuing for us all throughout the year with Saturn in Capricorn. And also because Jupiter, which is now retrograde and moving back towards Capricorn, even though it's not in Capricorn yet, it's opposing the Sun in Leo later on in the month. It's still in Saturn's sign in Aquarius. So Jupiter in Aquarius is having to really pay heed to Saturn, i.e., the ongoing restrictions. And so, whatever optimism is there, even though there is more there by the end of the month, it's still kind of having to be contained somewhat and be a bit more somber or sober. It's not really an over the top kind of gregarious, completely free expression, which you would normally expect to see with Sun, Mars, Venus in Leo opposite Jupiter. Um, that's what you would normally expect, but it's just not quite the case there because of Saturn. So that is the beginning of the month. I'm going to bring the month forward to the new moon. There's an important new moon on the 8th of August, and this new moon occurs in Cancer. Remember, sidereal Cancer. So this is at the very end of Cancer and in the lunar mansion Ashlesha, which is very much to do with manipulating energy for good or ill. So there's an emotional manipulation that can go on at the very end of Cancer, of course, when we become attached to something or someone. When we even just to think about becoming attached to an idea and think about Sun, Moon here with Mercury and this kind of getting attached to this way of doing things. And at the same time, this kind of opposition towards that because of the Saturn and the restrictions that are still in place, still constraining your ideas right now. So that's something to be mindful of in terms of this new moon. But it is a new moon opposite Saturn. So that means that the whole month, that the following lunar month from the 8th of August until the next new moon on the 7th of September has some constraint and restriction because of Saturn's opposition. Having said that, it's a very auspicious, it's seen as an auspicious lunar month in the Hindu calendar. It's called the month of Shravan. And it's due to the fact that the full moon within this lunar month usually occurs in Shravana, which is the lunar mansion here, opposite in Capricorn. And just so happens to be where Saturn is placed right now. Saturn is currently transiting retrograde through Shravana. So again, it's the big theme of Saturn. And even though this Shravana month is seen as auspicious, um, Saturn's influence will bring this kind of need to restrain oneself. And one of the remedies that's actually given traditionally every year at this time of year is the Saturn Fast. So in the month of Shravana, the first Saturday after the new moon and the following 16 consecutive Saturdays are observed for fasting for Saturn. And in a way, it's a way of inviting in restriction in your life in a positive way. Because if you don't do that, of course, if you're experiencing Saturn in a negative way, um, its default is usually a negative way. If it's like that thing you know you need to do with Saturn in your sixth house and you just don't do it, You therefore have to experience the negative repercussions of Saturn otherwise, because it's that thing you know you need to do, and you keep putting it off, and the fear and anxiety builds because you know you need to do it, and you might not be doing it. So that's what Saturn is. It's like it's this kind of nudge, constant nudge that gets louder and harder and feels more pressurized after a time when you're not doing the thing that you know you need to do. And if you do a fast for Saturn, if you're feeling that in any very powerfully restrictive way, or you're feeling a lot of pressure in your life, if it's a mental or emotional pressure you're feeling around these themes, then a Saturn fast is really helpful because it allows you to let go of some of that pressure. It allows you to lift some of that off. And you're basically purposefully inviting in restriction. Every Saturday you fast, you're not eating, or you might do a half fast, an intermittent fast, maybe for half the day, or you might eat little in the day, or you might restrict yourself in some way, even though traditionally it's a full fast from sunrise Saturday to sunrise Sunday. When you do that purposefully, again, you're inviting that purposefully in, you're squeezing out more and more of the Saturn negative attributes, which is feeling pressurized, feeling restrained, feeling frustrated because of that, feeling anxious when you're not doing the very thing you know you need to do, or feeling sad because you can't let go of whatever it is that's changed now in your life. That's another big theme of Saturn in Capricorn. And Saturn retrograde in Capricorn, especially, which is now at the midpoint of its retrograde, where we're really at the most intense period of changes that are happening. And this halfway point is showing us, yeah, this is what's happened. These are the changes that have happened, but these are the changes that still have to happen. And it's showing us that quite clearly with Saturn very bright in the night sky now as well. So if you can make the personal changes that that you're being forced to make, that you know you need to make, while looking after your energy and resetting, rebooting your whole system around this new moon on the 8th, and maybe incorporating in some restrictions on Saturdays here on out. If you're experiencing Saturn in a more negative way, this would be a very beneficial thing for you to do. So this new moon in Nishlesha, this new lunar month of Shravan, this is a time to really pay attention to any kind of restrictions and try and engage with them in more positive ways. But things are about to change, as I said, by mid-month in a big ways. I'm going to show you that. Now, on the new moon itself, Mercury actually moves signs. So Mercury moves into your sign, Leo, along with the sun after this new moon, really later on in the day and into the following day, you see here, there's a lot of planets gathered in your sign, and your ruler is about to move in too. So 4 planets, Mercury, Moon, Mars, Venus, Sun coming in, lots of focus on you, lots of focus on a personal sense of self and focus on the self, opposed by Jupiter, which is very much about your children, your creative endeavors, and the others, and other people's values and valuables, and maybe your in-laws and things like that. That's 8th sign. And the unknowables also, which is what the 8th sign is all about. And so you're still having to adhere to the restrictions because Saturn, Sun are still opposing. But with all the planets here now in your sign opposing Jupiter, Neptune, you still have to acknowledge that there's things that are not very clear, and that's quite obvious in the world today. So basically, whatever plans that you have or whatever things that you would like to do, and there's many things you would like to do with Venus, Mars now in your sign, there's a lot of passion here to do something. At the same time, you're not very clear about what you can do because of Jupiter, Neptune in the opposite sign. So even though it's altogether a more positive opposition now, and when we see the sun move, you'll see how that is lining up. First of all, Mercury or Venus moves into Virgo on the 11th. And then the sun moves on the 16th. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like here on the 16th. So first of all, Venus. Venus in Virgo is seen to be in its fall. And Venus doesn't express its strength in Virgo as it does as easily in Pisces, the opposite sign. And what is that? Venus's strength is to be happy. And the reason why Venus is not happy in Virgo is because Virgo says that you have to have a list of things in place before you can be happy. And so I'm not going to be happy unless this, and this is done in this, and this way. And unfortunately, this, and this never is done in this way that you'd like. It's never perfect. Life is a mess. Life is inherently messy. Relationships, especially, are messy. Venus is all about relationships. And when you put it in Virgo, which is a very exacting sign, life feels a bit sort of off, where we just don't feel happy about the way things are. And it might be okay, but it's just like there's this fly in the ointment. There's this just something that's upsetting the paradise you're trying to create. And especially in relationships, this will be apparent in your home life, in your interactions, but also in your work, because Venus, of course, rules your 10th sign as well as your third. So it's very much about how you're engaging, what you're doing, and what you would like to do. With Venus now in your second in Virgo, this could be something that's really important to you, something you value, like financially or whatever it might be, or some assets that you have. There's something important here, and you're having to at the same time be very open to other people's values and valuables and values. Um, so when you think about values and that you have your values and things that are important to you, how do you balance those with other people's values? And there's a need to do that right now, not just because of Venus here in Virgo, but because of these planets in your sign lining up against Jupiter and Neptune. So the sun has moved into your sign now by the 16th and into the 17th. It clears this juncture between Cancer and Leo, which is a bit of a tricky point, because the moon will also be in Scorpio, conjoin the south node of the moon at that time in your fourth house. So there's a tricky kind of energy around the 16th, 17th. That's something to be mindful of, and be very mindful of in terms of, especially in your home environment and your relations at home. But as this clears and as the moon moves on and the sun moves into great strength, you'll definitely feel a lot more buoyant at this time. And when we think about the Jupiter Sun opposition around the 20th, it's exact, but also Mars Mercury, which are exact in conjunction on the 19th. So Mars is very strong in your sign, so it's giving you a lot of energy. And Sun now is even like, it's given more. It's like fire upon fire, and that's all great. But Mercury is a bit sort of burnt out in the mix here, and Mercury is your speech. And because Venus is in your second sign, Mercury sign, this would be a time where you really, while you're negotiating your values with others and all of that, and trying to find a balance between everything, and a really strong urge to do something, you could lash out, and even if it's just verbally, and maybe have an argument at this time. So just be mindful of that around the 19th, especially. So that's the sun in your sign, like I said, for the next 4 weeks, last couple of weeks of August, first couple of weeks of September. This is just a more powerful time for you overall. And it's a time of year for you, Leo, to really recharge yourself on every level of your being. If this is your rising sign, or moon sign, emotionally, this is a time for really being clear about things as well. So it's more positive for sure overall. So I'm going to move it forward to the next major lunation, and that is the full moon that occurs on the 22nd of August, and it occurs in Aquarius. So this is the culmination point in this month of Shravan. And even though normally, like I said, it occurs in the actual lunar mansion Shravana, this is now actually in the next one, Dhanishta. And Dhanishta is very much about making a statement, like a pomp and ceremony, or making some noise and finding rhythm and finding out some sort of expression. It's very much linked with Mars itself, and Mars is opposite in your sign at this time. And so there's definitely this need to kind of, again, find this balance between your own needs and others in relationship. And although, again, more optimistic overall, there's this negotiation that's definitely taking place at this time between yourself and the other. So your partner obviously is the most obvious expression of this, but anyone that you're dealing with right now, you would have to find balance with. And because of all of this energy now that you have to express, that's been released now at the end of the month, this full moon, it could really go overboard, of course. That's one of the things with, Jupiter opposite Mars and Sun and all of that, and now joined by the moon. And because, again, Neptune is there in the mix, it's like there's not a lot of clarity, or there's no clarity coming from the other necessarily, whoever the other is. So that's the 22nd of August. It's a full moon. It's a full on full moon, as every full moon is. Now, there's the another key transition that's happening towards the end of the month, and that is that Mercury, having sped its way through your sign from um, the new moon on the 8th to the 26th, it moves into its own sign, Virgo, and it's in a much stronger position now. So, what ends up happening is we have a mitigation of Venus's weakness here, because Venus in Virgo, although weak and leads to a kind of a more critical time, and maybe a time for feeling unappreciated and maybe not appreciating others. Uh, Mercury in here can get more practical and down to earth, and let's get on with this and have a good conversation about it and work things out and plan ahead. Now, planning ahead is especially the case here in terms of your financial situation and your family situation, because of Mercury's rulership in your chart, and as it speeds ahead of the sun now, August is a time where you'll be doing a lot of planning around these things. But be mindful that Mercury will actually slow down by the end of September and start retrograding, and then move back into Virgo in October. So you're not going to be done with this yet. Now, the second sign, Virgo, is all about family, like I said, but it's also about finances and values. So that's again the deeper, more important issue is about value. What do you value? And reviewing what you value, and of course reviewing your finances and all of this, and your vision. Another thing is the second sign is speech, but it's also vision. So not just external vision, but in an inner vision. How do you see your life going? And so there's a lot of sort of things that you're going to be pondering now and reflecting over in the coming months. But now is the time to start planning ahead around these things. So that is the second sign. Real emphasis on Virgo for the next many weeks, in fact. And the month then ends with, I'll just show you the moon joining the nodes again, and it joins the nodes beginning of the month and end of month, and then also the mid-month period, that kind of volatile mid-month period where the moon is with the south node Ketu in Scorpio, and it begins and ends the month with the moon with Rahu, the north node in Taurus. Now, this shows more emphasis on your career, on work, but it also links it to home. And so, as many people are these days working from home, but even if you're not, it shows that there are changes going on in your home and your work environment, with an emphasis on more work than anything else, on just in general taking actions. What are you doing? And maybe a need to look at after your home environment and your home, and also your home within your bones, as I call it, where you really, it's about finding that sense of safety, security, and comfort in yourself, and not avoiding any emotional issues that are coming up, so that you can actually sit and be with yourself more so, with all of the activity that is going on in your world around you and all the changes that are happening around you. And just to finish with this point, that all of the faster moving planets are gathering in your sign in August and moving into the second sign and opposing all of these planets here. The slower moving and now retrograde planets, all of them are retrograde, including Uranus, which stations as well by the end of August. This shows this contrasted situation between your short-term needs and wishes and versus the long-term bigger picture, and the things that you don't have so much control over, especially. And so one of the things about Uranus, for example, in Aries, remember this is sidereal Aries I'm referring to, is that it's now retrograding and showing the inner changes that must now happen after many outer changes have occurred. So in your case, because it's in your ninth sign, it's maybe even just looking at how you can change your beliefs around what is happening right now, about anything you believe about, and especially in relation to travel plans and so on. And because Mars is such an important planet for you in terms of home and travel, taking a holiday and the changes in your home environment, all of these things need an adjustment at this time, with Uranus now stationing retrograde along with all the other planets here. So bigger themes that are going on for many months with the slower moving planets, but the month of August is a time to plan ahead in many ways as well, in the more immediate time frame, and to enjoy the energy that's coming back by mid-month onwards. So Leo, I hope that has been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead, and until next time.